This week, another online flight planning service meets its demise. EASA grants a type certificate to Evektor for the Sportstar, and Airbus once again delays repairs on the A380. I'm Ashley Hale. Welcome to Airborne on Aero TV. NavMonster, a very easy-to-use flight planning utility available on the web for a number of years, has shut down. In late April, NavMonster's Mark Alexander said that the company was being forced to change hosting companies after difficulties with their hosting company's complaint that they were, quote, consuming too many CPU cycles. But that proved to be only the tip of the iceberg. Alexander said last week that, quote, it has been decided that NavMonster will remain offline. Moving the code to another server was only the first hurdle to overcome. But faced with the upcoming concerns over AeroNav fees and the uncertainty from last year's lawsuit shenanigans with FlightPrep, that issue was just never resolved and is still looming over our heads. It's just not feasible to continue. Alexander continued saying, quote, my sincerest apologies for not returning each query and offer personally, but selling NavMonster or placing it in the public domain is just not possible. But thanks to everyone for the words of encouragement. In a pretty rare move, the NTSB has delegated the investigation of an accident which happened in Virginia over the holiday weekend to Transport Canada. But there's a good reason. Two airplanes, a Piper PA-28 and a Beechcraft BE-35, collided in flight about 5 miles from Warrenton-Fauquier Airport in Sumerduck, Virginia on Monday, resulting in the fatal injury of 2 people aboard the Beech. It was later learned that the Piper was registered to an FAA employee, and the Beech was registered to someone working for the NTSB. NTSB Chairman Deborah Hersman, in consultation with FAA Acting Administrator Michael Huerta, requested that the Transportation Safety Board of Canada conduct this investigation. NTSB investigator Paul Cox will serve as the NTSB's accredited representative to the TSB investigation. European pilots and flight schools have another type certified LSA trainer available for basic flight instruction, one which is familiar to many U.S. aviators. Tom Patton explains.
EASA has granted CS-LSA type certification to Evektor for its Sportstar RTC, making the light sport aircraft one of the first to be certified under EASA's latest regulations. The Sportstar RTC was certified as a derivative of Evektor's Harmony VLA, an EASA JAR VLA certified training aircraft. The Sportstar has been around a while. In 2005, it was the first aircraft to be FAA type certified in the SLSA category, and it has become a popular 2-seat aircraft for basic flight training. The Sportstar RTC was designed as a primary trainer. It's powered by a Rotax 912 engine, which will burn unleaded automotive fuel at a rate of under 4 gallons per hour. It has a 640-pound useful load and will carry just under 32 gallons of fuel. The EASA type certification enables Evektor to start deliveries of Sportstar RTC to customers in Germany, the Netherlands, the Czech Republic, and Turkey. For Airborne, I'm Tom Patton.
Rescuers from the Idaho National Guard airlifted a pilot and his wife and daughter from a mountainside Sunday afternoon, more than 15 hours after their plane went down at night onto a forested slope in a remote part of the state. The trio was aboard a Cessna 172 en route from California to Mountain Home, Idaho, when it went down at about 2100 Mountain Time on Saturday. One of the 3 used a cell phone just after midnight to report that they had survived the crash but had suffered head and back injuries. Colonel Tim Marsana of the Idaho National Guard said a medical helicopter was the first to spot the wreckage Sunday morning, but whiteout conditions didn't allow for an immediate rescue. Ground rescuers reached the crash site first. They wrapped the family members in blankets and built a fire until a military helicopter could lift them out with a hoist. The three were flown one at a time to a landing area about a half-mile from War Eagle Mountain in southwest Idaho. You're watching Airborne. More in a moment.
Since its inception, Redbird Flight Simulations has been dedicated to developing new training technologies and processes in an ongoing effort to make aviation safer, more affordable, and more accessible.
We're using technology to make this kind of training accessible to all flight schools of all sizes and all budgets, and to democratize flying in general, because we make this kind of training more accessible to people.
For more information about Redbird Flight Simulations, as well as Redbird's new skyport, visit www.redbirdflightsimulations.com or www.redbirdskyport.com.
At just 1100 Eastern Time last Friday morning, Dragon became the first commercial spacecraft to dock with the International Space Station. The crew of the ISS opened the hatch of the Dragon on Saturday and transferred supplies from the spacecraft to the orbital outpost. NASA gave the go for capture mid-morning on Friday, and the official time of docking was 11:02 Eastern Time. Images from NASA TV show the Dragon capsule docked to its port on the Harmony module at ISS. Just over an hour after docking, the station crew uncoupled the robotic arm from the Dragon capsule and began preparations for the hatch opening. Astronaut Don Pettit said the interior of the Dragon capsule had, quote, a new car smell after the hatch was opened. Dragon was scheduled to undock from ISS and return to Earth with a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean on Thursday. Check www.aero-news.net for continuing mission updates. The B-24 Diamond Lil was among 3 World War II aircraft on display and offering rides at the Carolinas Aviation Museum in North Carolina last weekend. A P-51 fighter and the last airworthy B-29 bomber in the world were also brought in by the Commemorative Air Force, the iconic Texas-based nonprofit group that restores and preserves World War II historical aircraft. During one of the B-24's flights, which was offered as a way to raise money for the aircraft, the landing gear suffered a malfunction. W.E. Carter of Charlotte said he was on the plane when it took off around 3 p.m. Saturday for a 30-minute ride. But as the pilot prepared to land, he said the crew realized that the landing gear was not working. The plane circled for about another hour as the crew cranked the landing gear down by hand. The Charlotte News Observer reports that the pilot landed the B-24 with the main gear down and locked, but the nose gear collapsed and the plane slid down the runway where emergency responders were waiting. The passengers were taken off the plane quickly, Carter said. Autumn Hicks, spokeswoman for the CAF, said the crew followed proper safety protocol, allowing the plane to land safely. She said the B-24 suffered only minimal damage. Bill Monroe, the managing director at Bond Aviation, is stepping down, coinciding with a review of the company's operations that is about to begin. Bond Aviation provides transportation to oil platforms in the North Sea and has been at the center of 3 major offshore incidents in as many years. The Scotsman newspaper reports that 2 years after Monroe became head of the company, a Bond-operated Super Puma helicopter went down, resulting in the loss of 2 pilots and 14 oil workers on board. The accident was called the worst helicopter disaster in the North Sea for 2 decades. That same year, another Super Puma carrying 15 oilmen and 2 pilots ditched in the North Sea, 125 miles east of Aberdeen. Fortunately, all survived. Earlier this month, another of the company's Super Puma fleet was involved in a dramatic controlled ditching 25 miles east of Aberdeen after the pilot reported a low oil pressure problem shortly after taking off from Aberdeen's heliport. No reason has been given for Mr. Monroe's surprise departure, and he was unavailable for comment. Airbus executives say they are delaying repairs to the A380 aircraft, which have developed cracks in their wing rib feet, into next year because, quote, "we only want to go and do this one time." The French news service AFP reports that Airbus Executive Vice President Tom Enders said that the permanent solution for aircraft in service will not be applied until early in 2013. The plane maker is expected to begin building wings for the Super Jumbos with a new type of aluminum which will not develop the cracks next year as well. Those airplanes will be delivered in 2014. Airbus has consistently held that the cracks do not pose a safety risk for the airplanes already in service. When you merge airlines and the airplanes belonging to one of the carriers don't match your business model, what do? Southwest Airlines announced last week that it hopes to ink a deal to sublease the 88 Boeing 717s inherited from its merger with AirTran to competitor Delta Airlines. The deal is considered a rare win-win solution to both carriers' fleet dilemmas. Offloading the 717s will allow Southwest to revert back to its one type, Boeing's 737, saving on training and maintenance cost, while allowing Delta to replace older DC-9s and 50-seat regional jets. The 717 shares a common type rating with the DC-9, so cross-training between types is minimal. There are still a few details to be ironed out before the deal can be finalized. Delta will start taking 717s next year at a rate of 3 per month until all 88 aircraft are accounted for. Mind you, this is all contingent on the approval of their pilots, who have yet to approve a new labor contract. In just a moment, ANN's editor-in-chief, Jim Campbell, asked whether some of aviation's letter groups are still focused on the industry they're supposed to represent. I'm Ashley Hale, and you're Airborne on Aero TV.
The DFC-90 all-digital attitude-based autopilot delivers significant performance and safety improvements over previous generation systems. Its innovative flight envelope protection guards against autopilot-induced stalls, and the straight and level mode provides one-button recovery from unusual attitudes for an added measure of safety. Immensely popular within the cirrus community, the DFC-90 is now being made available for a growing list of aircraft including Piper Matrix and Mirage, Cessna 182s, and Beech Bonanzas and Barons. Fly with confidence. Fly with DFC-90.
Thanks for joining us. It's time for this week's Barnstorming Commentary. ANN's Jim Campbell wants to know what the mission of today's aviation associations is really about. Have they decided that they have become more important than the industry they're supposed to represent? Evidence suggests this may unfortunately be the case.
Hi Ashley, and hi folks. We're monitoring a number of disparate reports, subjects all over the map, concerning the associations, the alphabet associations, if you will, that at one time really represented aviation well. And while a few associations, and in particular some of the smaller ones, are still doing amazing work, and in some cases superlative work, we're beginning to wonder where the hearts and minds of the leadership of today's larger associations is going. We're seeing a disturbing trend, a very disturbing trend, where they seem to feel that their interest, their rep, is more important than what they're supposed to be representing, namely their industries. Something's seriously wrong here. We're watching them do some damage in competing with member companies, especially in the flight planning area recently. Why did one start putting forth a new online flight planning product while ignoring the 4 flights and the wing X's of the world and dealing with a company with a kind of interesting reputation as it was? Why are they trying more and more to dictate how media is covering, or even that matter, limiting the coverage that occurs of their organization, or for that matter, trying to put on grandiose, expensive, and ridiculous at times, quote-unquote, media coverage that does nothing more than, well, toot their own horn? When an organization has a lobbying arm and also claims to have a journalistic arm, don't you see the inherent conflict? And more important, who could possibly believe the hype of an organization covering itself? I don't get it. There's more issues than this. We're watching a lessening in activity on the safety front. We're seeing more and more activities about, watch me, we're doing great things, it's cool. I can fly this airplane out in the islands and have a great time, when in fact, why isn't the president of the organization in Washington pushing things on the Hill and asking why this administration seems to be so anti-aviation? Why isn't there more effort on user fees and safety and licensing and deregulation? Why aren't people talking more and more about re-innovating an industry that's lost its sense of innovation? And most important of all, why the hands out for everything under the sun when they're wasting a tremendous amount of money on stuff that just really doesn't matter? I won't go back into the, some of the weird things that have happened in the past, this club, that club, so forth and so on. It really hurt the organizations at the time. We thought they got smarter, and now we're not so sure. But let me put it to you this way. You cannot elect the president of a modern aviation association. You can't even elect the members of the board, per se, through conventional means. You pretty much got to take what they give you. So how can we possibly think they represent us until they're beholden to us, listening to us, working with us, and in fact, truly obeying a mandate of their constituency? Something's wrong here. We're going to be talking about this more and more in the weeks ahead, but I want you to question your associations and ask them what are they doing for you, and holding their feet to the fire to make sure that they're representing your interests adequately, responsibly, and clearly. For the Aero-News Network, Aero TV, and of course Airborne, I'm Jim Campbell, well, causing trouble as usual. Take care, folks, and go fly something.
The Australian Army's fleet of Tiger-armed reconnaissance helicopters has returned to regular training activities following the lifting of a temporary suspension that was put in place on May 16th, following the detection of fumes in the cockpit of the aircraft. There are 22 of the aircraft in the Australian Army's fleet, which is not yet fully operational. The Army Operational Airworthiness Authority lifted the suspension following a detailed assessment and a recommendation from the Technical Airworthiness Authority to resume flying operations. Piper Aircraft Incorporated is adding the Kelly Aerospace Thermal Cool Air Conditioning System to new 2012 twin-engine Piper Seminoles as an option, and making the system available via retrofit for the Seminole fleet. Kelly Aerospace, Thermal Systems LLC, and Piper worked collaboratively on the FAA-approved Supplemental Type Certificate and made the announcement jointly on Tuesday. The air conditioning system uses less than 45 amps at peak load and has a total weight of approximately 60 pounds, including the 28-volt bus system. Cool air is ducted through the Seminoles air distribution and ventilation system. All the components are mounted in the aft tail cone with no interface with the engine. The only evidence of the system in the cockpit is a panel-mounted digital display controller. Piper says that the field installable kit will be available for in-service Seminoles through its distribution network. Reports of debris falling from an airliner are being investigated by Transport Canada after several vehicles were damaged on the ground. The investigation centers on Air Canada Flight 001, which took off from Toronto at 1410 Eastern Time Monday, destined for Tokyo. Air Canada spokesman Peter Fitzpatrick said one of the Boeing 777's engines was reportedly shut down after takeoff, prompting the flight crew to return to Toronto Pearson International Airport. The plane landed normally and passengers returned to the gate. CNN reports that about an hour earlier, people began reporting seeing smoke, and one spotted what may have been debris coming from a large airliner. Local police received several calls from people reporting vehicles had been damaged by debris falling from the sky. As many as 5 vehicles were being investigated for damage Monday afternoon. A number of vehicles around the parking lot of a Petro-Canada station in Mississauga were damaged. Fitzpatrick said shortly after the incident that there had been no confirmation at this time that debris had fallen from the Air Canada plane. He said, quote, "There will be a full investigation into this incident, as there always is, and that will determine what happened." Cottonwood, Arizona police have arrested a man they caught on video firebombing a medevac helicopter early Friday morning. The incident occurred at about 02:30 local time on the Verde Valley Medical Center's helipad. According to Cottonwood Police Chief Jody Fanning, security video shows Richard Butts, 26, throwing a beer bottle he had apparently filled with gasoline at Guardian Air's Bell 407, which was tied down on the pad just feet from a tank of jet fuel. The resulting fire charred the front of the aircraft and put a hole in the windshield. Damage is estimated at over $200,000, but no injuries were reported. AZFamily.com reports that police say the motivation for the attack is not clear, but that Butts had reportedly been drinking. He will face charges including criminal damage and arson, and because the attack involved an aircraft, there may be federal charges pending as well. And now it's time for our AVW, the Aero Video of the Week. This week, a Southern Air Boeing 747 sitting in a Mojave, California boneyard tries to take off in winds roaring across the desert at 70+ miles per hour. Without the weight of its engines, the airplane becomes slightly tail heavy and appears to be attempting to rotate on its own. To find this video, go to YouTube and search for 747 lifting in place. The full video runs about 2.5 minutes in length. If you have a suggestion for a future Aero Video of the Week, send us a link to news-spy@aero-news.net. Finally this week, for over 10 years, there has been a curfew in place for the East 34th Street Heliport in New York City. The city-owned facility is open from 8 in the morning until 10 at night, Monday through Friday, and closed on weekends. The information is posted on the FAA website. But in just the past 6 months, one resident living near the heliport says that New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg has operated his helicopter outside the bounds of the curfew. ABC News reports that Ron Sticco, who lives near the facility, has actually filmed the mayoral Helo flying in and out of the heliport when it's supposed to be closed, including 16 times in just the past 6 months. Mayor Bloomberg told ABC that it's his understanding that the heliport is open on the weekends, despite what is depicted on the charts distributed by the heliport to pilots. Get comprehensive, real-time, 24/7 coverage of the latest aviation and aerospace stories anytime at aero-news.net. And join us again next week for another edition of Airborne here on Aero TV. I'm Ashley Hale. Thanks for watching. See you next week.